Despite the repeated calls of the international community, Netanyahu proposes to continue with his attack on Hezbollah and Lebanon. Keir Starmer last night said that further escalation serves no one, but produces more suffering on all sides. And it is worth looking at some of the facts. 9,000 missiles have been slung from Hezbollah onto Israel, onto civilian centers like Haifa and Tel Aviv, and the brilliance, in a way, of Israeli defense means that there have been very few casualties. But at the same time, Netanyahu is quite clearly the aggressor in this war, as in the war and the siege of Gaza, calling for a pause, calling for a ceasefire that the international community knows that he will not respect and that he will reject, is to pay lip service to peace and to the role of the international community in trying to broker a deal. What is needed is not these platitudinous calls for peace, but a clear plan, a roadmap towards coexistence in the region, rather than these sort of snorts of derisory rhetoric. It's wasting time. A ceasefire. The people who walked down the streets calling for a ceasefire, I think they were not fully aware of what they were calling for. A ceasefire is not an end to the problem. A ceasefire is simply a part of that process. But a ceasefire is pointless unless there is a clear roadmap. The two-state solution for the Palestinians is one possible goal, but to get to that, we need a clear series of targeted destinations. One of those might be a ceasefire, but a ceasefire is not in itself helpful. And a 21-day ceasefire, who came up with the idea of 21 days? What does that benefit anybody? The people like Lieutenant Colonel Conricus talks about the land invasion is Netanyahu's way to put pressure on Hezbollah to get the diplomatic wheels spinning. Well, you don't bomb people into diplomacy. That is as absurd as walking down the street calling for a ceasefire. What is important is to deal with the problems. That is the hospitals that are filling up, the displaced people. So if you can't get a ceasefire, wasting time calling for a ceasefire and being vague is simply satisfying yourself. It's simply massaging the diplomats and the politicians in the West. It serves no purpose. These people are speaking for their memoirs, not to help individuals. So if we cannot get peace, then we need to deal with the consequences of war. Which means it doesn't matter how many people are stationed in Cyprus, they are useless unless they are on the ground helping to get people out, helping to get people medical treatment. And we face exactly the same issues that we faced as a global community with the onslaught and the siege by Israel against Gaza, where foreign help couldn't get in because the war was so intense. And that's gone on for a year. And the Hezbollah situation could be equally as tense, equally as fraught. The hospitals in Beirut cannot deal with the casualties that already exist. and the casualties in the south of Lebanon cannot make their way up to Beirut because of the targeted roads and the roads filled with people fleeing the area. And again, to issue statements that British nationals should leave Lebanon, it's impossible. The airport isn't working properly. To leave Lebanon overland, or where do you go? Into Syria, another country filled with war. Into Israel. It's not possible to leave except with help, and this is where the British government should be offering targeted help rather than uttering platitudinous calls for a ceasefire. This is nonsensical, and it's not dealing with reality. But we've seen it before, and we will no doubt see it again. And we see the same sort of thing issued about Ukraine and Russia. The role that we can play as witnesses to these awful events is to sit down with individuals in the Israeli government, to sit down with Hezbollah, with the Lebanese government, to sit down with Ukrainian leaders and with Russian leaders and talk about the practical steps towards a resolved peace, particularly that affects us. In Russia and Ukraine, we should be talking about ramping up or de-escalating sanctions. And we should be doing it quite openly, as a demonstration of the way that talks can go should Putin and Zelensky eventually hold talks together. It's not only about achieving some sort of movement diplomatically now, it's about showcasing the process for the future. And we don't seem to be doing any of that. Instead, we just seem to be posturing. And I'm so tired listening to these tin pot posturers, from Starmer down to Netanyahu, because they're all at it. Their eye is on posterity rather than practical reality, and rather than care for their people. And there are things that we can do, and we should be doing them, and we should be doing them openly.